Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate, with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to another episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. This week I have my awesome guest, Sav Almeida. Sav, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hey, Glenn. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. And more than just having me on your show, I want to really thank you because you're bringing something that, a lot of us Canadians sitting in Canada, obviously, who have ideas and ambitions and dreams of investing in the U.S. Because of the numbers, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that. But, we don't have that knowledge. We don't have that information. We don't have that risk-taking, mindset that you bring with your guests and yourself onto the show, and you help us, go past those roadblocks. So I want to really thank you for sharing your, wealth of knowledge and bringing guests like myself on to share their wealth of knowledge as well with the Canadian public, because that's so important, man. So really thank you for that.
I really appreciate that. That's, it's been a hard day, so I really appreciate that. It's one of those things you're like, it's a long day. Am I really going to record another podcast tonight? And you're like, yeah, I am. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. That's awesome.
No, absolutely, man. Absolutely. If I just want to add on to that is that, basically you have guys like you, and we know there's a ton of investors out there doing podcasts, and now more so than before, obviously, right? But I myself have one, a Facebook Live, if you will.
Yeah.
I know the work involved, right, and the effort it takes. So, we got to give back and say thanks to the guys who are actually doing that stuff, because for the ones who are listening for free, that's a hell of a lot of work, and really appreciate the effort involved in that. So thanks for that. Okay, let's jump. Enough about you. Let's talk about me.
Yes, talk about you.
Yeah. Well, I'll make it short and simple. I mean, I got started in real estate investing when I was living in Oakville. For those of your audience who don't know, that's a very high end or I would say the rich neighborhood of the GTA, right?
Yep.
Where the average home price is about $1 million. And here I get started in real estate investing and flipping specifically, right? So that's the only thing I knew about real estate investing when I first got started. I didn't know anything about the BRRRR strategy or Airbnb, other than the fact that I actually stayed in a couple, or student rentals or anything like that, right? I got into flipping. And Oakville is probably the worst place on the planet where you can possibly do a flip, right?
Yeah.
So I learned the hard way. And in the course of my education, I learned very quickly, and from experience as well, from that first flip, was one thing that I live and die by today, and that's the money is in the buy, right? The money is in the buy, and it's not in the finishes that you put in the product. It's not in when you sell the product, or the cost that you can probably save during renovations and then sell for a higher price later. None of that you can control. What you can control is how much you pay for that property when you first buy it, and that's super important, right? So forward, long story short, I had to find a cheaper market pretty much to get that savings, if you will, or make that money in the buy. So I started exploring. I went out to in Ontario itself. I started going out to Hamilton. Hamilton was freaking expensive. I went out to Kitchener-Waterloo. That's expensive as well. When I say expensive, you need a mortgage to get one of those properties, right, in order to flip. So not only are you holding that mortgage for that period of time, you had to have the credit behind that, and so you had to qualify, right?
Yeah.
Because these are minimum $500,000 homes. When I was in Hamilton, I actually took a detour one day and I went over to Buffalo because the educational program that I was in was U.S. based. And they're, obviously what they know, the prices they know is U.S. prices, right?
Yep.
They can't fathom the thought that we're paying $1 million in Canada for a house, right?
Yeah, no.
That's not even finished that we want to flip. It's insane. It's insane. So they kept telling me, go out to the U.S. markets. What's close to you? Yeah, oh my God, Niagara's close.
Yeah,
right?
kinda.
So
yeah.
I can go. Kinda from Oakville. It's
not too bad.
Far.
No, not too bad.
Couple of hours, and I went out there and I went to a couple of meetups. I saw a couple of homes. I was a new flipper. These are beautiful homes, no doubt, beautiful homes, but they are century homes. They are 100, 200-year-old homes. A lot of them are wood frame. They're not even brick, and I just thought to myself, do I really want to get into that in the start? Probably not, right? So I stepped back a little bit. I said, okay, what's the next closest area I could go to Cleveland or I could go to Detroit. And I said, okay, Detroit's not too bad. It's 4 hours. Let's go and see.
Yep.
And that's exactly what I did. So I drove up one day and, I lined up, actually it was a few days. So I think it was a 3 days stint where I lined up meetups that I would go for, right?
Yep.
So I went online, first of all, I researched the meetups, what's available, booked them, bought my ticket or whatever. And I said, okay, I'm going to go for 3-4 days. We'll hit up all these meetups and let's go see what happens. And that's what I did. And in one of these meetups, I met a guy, and he said, oh, you were in the other meetup the other day. I was like, yes. And you were in the other meetup the other day too. It's like, yes.
I noticed.
You were in all those meetups.
Yeah.
Yeah, he noticed, right? And people called him Mr. Detroit, Todd Chun. He's just Mr. Detroit. Everybody knew Todd and Todd knew everybody, right? And that's the guy you want to really connect with right from the start. I was fortunate enough and lucky enough that I actually met Todd. And he told me, he said, Todd told me, he said, listen, Sav, why don't you come over for a week and just hang out with me? Just stay, sit in my truck and follow me wherever we go. And we'll just talk. We'll just shoot shit every day. And, you'll see what I do. And if you like it at the end of the day, maybe we'll do a deal together. I was like, okay, how much do you want for that? Right? Yeah. How much do I got to pay you for that? Because that's education that is, you're not going to get in a classroom.
Hands-on.
Right? Yeah. So I thought it was very expensive. And Todd was like, nah, it's free. Just come. I enjoy real estate investing, and I like meeting people who, enjoy real estate investing. And you seem like that kind of guy. Just come and sit with me. I'm like, man, I'm taking you up on that deal, right? And and that's what I did. I came back, I think 2 weeks later or something like that. I sat with Todd for a week. Todd's a wholesaler. He's a buy and holder. He's a flipper. He goes to all the auctions. So the guy did everything basically. And you know how the saying goes that, you do everything, but you're a master of none. Yep. Todd was a master of each one of those things, so it was the greatest learning experience that I had in such a quick time and such a short time. And I knew right off the bat after that 1 week, Detroit is the place to be for what I wanted to do at that point, which was flipping. Right? And here I am 2 years later, I'm still in Detroit and physically sitting in Detroit. So here I am.
I was going to ask you that. I was like, you still in Detroit? Yeah.
Yes, I am. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And one part you didn't mention, you left out of your story, was the whole Windsor part that you sounds like you're still living in Oakville, but there's a little bit you left out of there.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, after I started doing my first flip there, I was commuting. I was going for a week, coming back for a couple of days, going for 2 weeks, coming back for a couple of days. The flip took about 4 months, but I didn't want to really stay in Detroit. And after the success of that first flip, I thought to myself, listen, this is the place to be. And I had the conversation with my wife. I said, listen, we can't go to U.S. We're not U.S. citizens. We're Canadians, right? But what's the next best option? And that's Windsor, Ontario. So we packed our bags one day and said, okay, that was 2017. Let's take this drive and let's go. So pretty much it was an overnight decision. We moved to Windsor because of the proximity of Detroit, and now that's changed a little bit for sure. But that was how we got to Windsor. From my home today to my home in Windsor to where I am sitting right now, which is close to one of my projects, 35 minutes over the border.
To drive
so
it, yeah.
I was to drive, land border, 35 minutes. I mean, you can't go wrong. That's the perfect geographical location for a flip, right? Or for any project for that matter.
Yep.
Because you're so close proximity. I was coming over maybe 2-3 times a week before we had all this COVID crap. Just to check out my project. So perfect world scenario. Windsor's located in an awesome place because you are still in Canada. You have the comforts of home, you have the security of home, but then you have this access to the States, and that opens up so many doors, right?
So I know a lot of people are going, holy crow, Detroit! That sounds scary. That sounds scary. I know you got this mentorship to learn some neighborhoods, but did you learn where not to invest and maybe some lessons of not to do in Detroit?
Yeah, sure. Some the hard way, and some, just following advice. Todd told me 2 things which I never forget, and I still live by today. 2 things. Number 1, never stop for gas in Detroit, the city of Detroit. Never stop for gas. If you want gas, you go in the suburb somewhere. Okay. Sure enough, I can still remember one experience that I had. I was driving around and I had to get to my project. I was running solo on gas, and I'm a guy who will run the tank, past the E sign until it starts flashing and beeping and alarm starts going off. And I said I got to stop for gas, and it was in the city, and I stopped. And the moment you stop and you get out of the car to pump the gas, you get a trove of what should I say, characters that come up to you. Hey man, how's it going? What's going on? Da, da, da. They love to talk, right? They love to talk. At the end of the day, they want money. They want something, from you, and they just won't leave you alone until the point that you actually give them money, and so on and so forth. And some of these guys are unfortunately drunk or high, so you wanna stay away from that. And if the Detroiters know themselves that they shouldn't be pumping gas in the city, then I like to follow that rule for sure. That was the first rule. The second rule is never buy a house next to a party store. All right. And I was like, what the hell is a party store?
Yeah.
And yes, it's as bad as it sounds. So a party store is a liquor store. Okay. So it's an LCBO.
Yeah.
For us, we complain a lot that it's government controlled, but if you come to Detroit and you see the so-called LCBOs over here, I'm happy it's government controlled, because these are private entities, enterprises, and you get a lot of riffraff hanging around on the outside, right? So whether they're buying the actual product from the store or selling some product in the street, never buy a house next to any one of those things, right? A gas station or a party store, a liquor store, because that traffic is going to, it's going to be detrimental to your project for sure. So those are the two things that I live and die by in Detroit. For sure.
Those are good tips. I usually whenever I'm going into Detroit, I'm usually getting gassing up at the border. So yeah, I usually don't have that problem. But you know what?
Best place.
Yeah.
Best place. I mean, listen, in the States, the gas is so cheap. It doesn't matter if you're at the border gas station where it's a few cents cheaper than, in the rest of not the city, but the surrounding part of the city. So for me, it doesn't make a difference. Yeah.
Okay, so you said off the start, you did the first flip, and it was enough to go, you know what? This is what I'm doing. This is my path for now, at least. This is my path. This is what I want to do. How did that go? Just walk us through that deal.
Yeah, so, after that first week with Todd, I pretty much told him, I said, listen, man, find me a deal, right? You're a wholesaler, find me a deal, and, I'm happy to pay you a wholesaling fee or whatever, and help me out, get me some contractors if you can, just show me the way, right? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. Obviously, he was incentivized. So he did find a deal. I bought okay, so here's the deal. It's a single family home, right?
Yeah.
I bought it for $40,000. Okay. And when we looked at ARVs and so on and so forth, and this is all Todd, right? Oh yeah, he's a realtor as well, by the way. The Todd of many trades. But he got me the comps, and the comps were about 120, right? So through this education, I learned quickly, money's in the buy, of course, and you want to buy, at least 50%. And we're talking American here, right?
Yep.
Different in Canada, but in the US, if you can get something for 50% of its ARV, half its value, right?
Yeah.
You are going to stand to make some money, right? There's no doubt about it, right? Because that's just a general formula, high level. So when I looked at this deal, 40K, ARV 120, that's a third. So there's no way I can go wrong with this one, right? Even if it's a first timer.
Yeah.
But of course,
So did you get a renovation quote before buying, or you figured that out after?
We did a quick walkthrough with Todd. So, he's like, listen, we got to do basic, no granite, laminate countertops, no appliances. We don't put appliances in the houses, so don't have to worry about that. Do floor paint, refresh the bathroom, kitchen, keep the kitchen cabinets, and you're good. Right? So it was a very ballpark kind of thing. I did my own math. I went to Home Depot, looked at the pricing and so on and so forth. I didn't have the actual contractors to do the job. That's where my fear was, right? Not so much in the material cost, but in the contractors.
Yeah, the labor.
I got my cousin, right? And he's going to help you out, and he does everything. So I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. So we started the project, 3 months in, everything was going good, yada, yada, yada. And then I come back home. So at this point, I was still commuting, right, to Detroit and back from Oakville. I come back home for a couple of days, and the neighbor, he calls me. The neighbor of this house in Detroit, he calls me. And he says, "Listen, the city's been out there. They put some kind of tag on your door. Be careful about that, because they're gonna rack up the bill." So I come back after the weekend or whatever. And it's a stop work order basically. So they want to. Yeah, so they don't want permits. They want a COO, right? And which is a certificate of occupancy, and basically follow the process. At that point, we were literally, I want to say, doing landscaping on the outside, and we were done with the project.
Oh no!
Yeah. So that was our first learning by fire, if you will.
So what did they do? Did they make you open some walls up? What was required?
No, so luckily we get in there. Well, luckily and unluckily, right? So he didn't ask me to open the walls, but in the inspection, here's how naive I was. I find out that during this inspection, I find out that this home is actually a model home, what they call a model home, right? So it's basically a prefab home, but it's not the prefab that we know in Canada. It's one of those cheap prefab homes, right? Which they basically make it somewhere and they come and they drop it in there. They have slots and openings for electrical, HVAC and so on and so forth that you can never change, right? So here's the issue. Now, when you try to get parts for these things, you got to go to specialty stores to get the right faucets, the right sockets, the right switches, the furnace, spare parts, and so on and so forth. And I was like, oh my God, right? I had no clue whatsoever. So the inspector comes in and he's like, yeah, these sockets don't work. You got an electrical issue here, da-da-da, which for me was very cosmetic in my scope of work. I wasn't doing any electrical or HVAC or any of that. But now he pulled it up. I got to bring people to do it, right? And that's when I found this is what they call a model home. So it pushed back quite a bit, to get these different parts and get the people who knew what they were doing, because it's a crawl space. You have to have worked in one of these before to understand where's the location of all these things, right? So that 1 week when I thought I was out of the project ended up being a month and a half extra, just to get all this stuff done. But in the end of the day, I did get the COO, and we did sell that house, and we made about 30 grand on it. So I'm not too, I'm not too disappointed. Yeah.
U.S.
Yes.
Depending on how long ago, that could be really good. It could be not very good. But you said it was an extra month and a half. How long was the whole project?
So from beginning to end, it took 5 months.
5 months. That's a good one. Yeah, it's I usually aim for 6 months to be fully.
Yeah, no, it turned out quite good.
Yeah, or less.
Yeah. The money was good at the end of the day. The learning was good for me because, obviously I didn't know what I was doing at that point. But I quickly realized a couple of things. I'm never going to go for a model home anymore because, just for the.
Is there a way to tell that? Does it show up on if you go into zoning or something? Where do you find out if it's a model home?
Well, first of all, basically you have to have the eye for it, right? So now I can walk in and I can say, okay, this is not your traditional home. So you can go and look in the furnace, for example. It's in a closet somewhere, which is about that wide, right? And the furnace doesn't look like your normal furnace. It's meant for those type of homes. So you're not going to go get a normal HVAC guy to come in and change out that furnace. It's not going to happen, right? The plates and the plugs and the switches are indented into the wall, so you can know that it's not cut out into drywall. It's sort of like a plastic indent into the wall. So it's very easy to find out. If you go into the bathrooms, the faucets, all of that stuff is, it's not the typical. If you pull them up, you'll find out that the holes behind there are pre-drilled, and you can't cut out another space to open it up and change out the whole piping and so on and so forth. So that's all through experience. What? I never after that particular project, I said to myself, the only homes I'm going to go for from henceforth are brick. Not even vinyl, brick, So I never had that problem anymore because if I saw a red brick outside, I was like, okay, that's an opportunity. I didn't have to look for that model home anymore. But yeah,
you've been throwing lots of little nuggets in there. If people are listening, you got to be catching them. But yeah, there was another one, the brick houses. You said that you couldn't get a regular HVAC guy to do that. Is there a specialty company that does just these model homes?
Yep. So you got to go. So you can't get any supplies from Home Depot or Lowe's. So there are specialty stores that that sell the supplies for the model. When I say supplies,
more money?
No, so the pricing is not that much different. It's actually it's quite affordable, right? Because these are cheaper, so-called cheaper built homes. Yeah. So the issue is the supply, right? So there may be 1 or 2 stores in that city that you're in that sell that kind of stuff, and if they don't have it in stock, they got to order it. So that pushes back, your timeline and so on and so forth. Honestly speaking, there's an opportunity, right, for people to be an expert in that, because there's so many of these homes in I can speak only for Detroit, that are available, that if you get that specialty and you know where to source these materials, no other investor wants to touch these kind of deals because it's harder for them, right? So think about it. If I could make 30 grand on my first flip, and this was the kind of deal, if you become a specialized in that kind of home, there's an opportunity there for sure.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I've actually been starting to rethink a lot of stuff too, because you're like, oh, I don't want to go to this tax lien state because it's really difficult. But you're like, because it's difficult, there's fewer people doing it, and you might actually be opportunities. You can think of the opposite with everything. A lot of people are going to flood to these really hot markets, or they're going to flood to these really landlord-friendly markets. Mind you, Detroit is one of the most, or Michigan is one of the most landlord-friendly states in the U.S. But anyway, just by thinking the opposite way of the crowd, there's usually some sort of, you can make advantage out of that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, you've heard it before, they complain about there's no deals. There's no deals because you're looking in the wrong place. You're looking where everybody else is looking, right?
You're looking at the Redfin ad that came to you that everybody got.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned that you don't do appliances. I was wondering why you don't do appliances. Is it a price point, or is it a Detroit thing? Why don't you do appliances in flips?
So let me put it this way. In Detroit, when you're doing a budget, we have at least $5,000. Okay, I don't care what kind of home you're doing. We have $5,000, what we call the Detroit factor. Okay.
Well, they have legs.
Detroit factor. Yes, exactly, right. So if you can cut that out from the start, that opportunity of growing legs from the start, might as well do it, because you can't, unfortunately, depending on what season you are in, you can't take out the furnace from every single home that you do, because for showings you got to have the house heated, right? You can take out the water tank, and I do that. So I put in a water tank, pass inspection or whatever, and I take it out, and then I put it back at closing date, right? So we want to mitigate as much as possible. Appliances is just this thing, right? It goes. It's never going to stay the whole course of the showings, unfortunately. Again, it depends on which part of the city you're in, where you're doing. If you're in a nice suburb like Royal Oak, for example, you got no issues, and you probably have to put in appliances because the buyer will demand it, right? But anyway, in the city of Detroit, not highly unlikely they're going to ask for it. So.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just curious about it, because I know like certain states, like if you go into lots of big chunks of Indiana, you don't put appliances in there because it's customary that everyone brings their own appliances or does appliance packages, even tenants, and they just don't do it there. Yeah. So I wasn't sure if it was going to be something like that. Interesting. I had another question. I completely forgot what it was. I should have wrote it down. But
while you think about that, let me give you another tip. If you're because you're asking about places not to go or things not to do. I just remember the story over here. If you're working with other investors and you're bringing them over for tours, make sure they roll in your car and not their own. Because I had one investor come up with his Tesla Model X or whatever the model was. I don't even know that. Yeah. No, it was the SUV. The SUV that had the doors open like that. In the middle of a Detroit hood, and everybody on the street stopped, whatever they were doing, and came up and like, oh, look at that car, man, look at that car. And the whole street was looking at that car, right? That's just like, okay, what are you doing here, by the way? Oh, you're from Canada. Oh, really? You're fixing up this house. Oh, that's nice. Okay, so you're not here all the time. You're just passing through. Aha.
Yeah.
So nowadays when I bring investors, I say, you come into my home in Windsor and we're all getting into my car, and then we're going across the border. So,
that makes sense too. You get to chat the whole time too. Does having an Ontario license plate flag anything on? Does it attract any attention?
No, not really.
I know I was down in Alabama looking at a 12-plex, and people came out everywhere. Are you looking to buy this place? This is all the problems. I'm like, okay, come here. I'm going to write the problems down. But I'm like, oh shit, they know I'm from Canada. One girl pulled out her phone. Ontario, that looks like Canada. He's like, are you from Canada? Yeah. They're like, I've never met anyone from Canada. But yeah, anyway,
they probably never met anybody from the next state over, but
that could be true.
Detroit is so close to Windsor. We have there. It's I like to think it's an extension of Windsor is an extension of Detroit, or vice versa. You have so many locals from both cities going across the border every day for work. So it's the Ontario plate is a
you just need one of those the new Ontario plates that they got rid of, the blue. They're all blue with the white letters because they're just like Detroit's. They fit right in. Anyway, Detroit, flipping, I guess remote management or on-site management. I guess you're in Detroit right now. Well, what do you want to touch one of those topics quick before we close this off? Whichever one interests you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm probably the hardest person to pick, when it comes to trying to scale on a massive level, right? And the reason for that is that I am super anal about my projects, right? In the sense of I want to be there. If I could replicate myself, which I have now, I think at Windsor, I want to be hands-on, right? And that's, again, through experience. I find in Detroit, at least, or in the States, well, I should say Detroit, people are lazy, man. Unfortunately, I gotta say that they're lazy, right? And if you're not there to show that you're interested in your own work and your own project, then there's high likelihood of it just slipping out of your grasp. So, for example, the two projects that I'm working on right now, I bought pre-COVID, January or February this year. Yet, yes, COVID was impacted a lot of labor and resources and so on and so forth. But I had some guys who were willing to work. And they were coming in, but they were just too slow. And, I had to follow up with them. And it was a constant battle every day. And now I come in to check the status of these two projects. And pretty much all the work that they had done, I have to rip out and start again. So, So, me personally, again, I'm super hands-on. And that's why I can do about 10, maybe 15 a year. I have enough of me to go around between Detroit and Windsor. I think it's hard. My advice is that I hear all these people online and social media saying that they're doing all these projects left, right, and center, and they got all these teams set up and processes set up. Yes, it's possible. It's just hard. I mean, Glenn, I know you have quite a few projects and you do a lot remotely. What do you think about that?
I totally agree, and I had to go at some point this year and say I can't do anymore. Like I need to mentally be there on all these things, and you're just like, it's nice to be all managed in this software, but at some point you need to have it in your head. And as soon as you get, like I was saying, like my limit's 12 at a time. If I get over 12 renovations on the go, I start to forget addresses. I forget like some of the details. I got to look up my notes, and it's just like I'm like, okay, no, I can't unless I once I get my wife doing more of the work, maybe then I can just focus on the certain things. But right now I'm just doing everything. She wants to. I'm lucky. She wants to be part of it more. So she's a stay-at-home mom now, and so so she wants to be part of it. So it'll work out. But I totally agree with what you're saying. One thing I wanted to go back to is you were talking about being lazy and being on site and working, and I think we should define that you're not picking the hammer up and putting the nails in and doing the project. You're on site to manage people, right?
Yeah. No, you wouldn't want that house if I was lifting up that hammer. No.
But I thought we should define that. Yeah. So some people might think you're like going down there to go and renovate these houses yourself. And
No. My skill is getting people to work in a unison, right? In one kind of team effort. So I schedule the work involved. I make sure that the framers out, before the electrician comes in, or if there's a little bit of gap, or if the electrician can actually gel with the plumber so they can work on the site together. Otherwise I got to move the other guy, if they have a conflict or whatever, move him to another project, and so on and so forth. That's what my skill is, right? So I just bring that. I'm a puppet player, pretty much. But at the same time, I find that if I'm not physically there and I'm just on the phone or video, I do a lot of video, right? It just doesn't have that same impact. It just doesn't have that same impact, right? It goes so far. But I give you an example. I came now to look at one of my projects. We discussed this with my framer and drywall guy, who's the same guy, a lot over the phone, right? So we had cut out this one wall between the kitchen and the dining room to open up the space, but we still had the studs. It's a load-bearing wall, so some of the studs were exposed on either ends of that wall, right? And I told him, I said, listen, just when you frame it out, one is shorter than the other. Make sure that it's the same width before we drywall. So aesthetically, when you look at it, it looks like a nice little picture frame, right? And I got here, and one's about 6 inches, wider than the other. So it looks like it's just off. And I'm like, dude, we talked about this on the phone. I showed you in the video. He's like, oh, it slipped my mind. So it's these little things that if I had let it go, if I was not here, it would have passed, and somebody would have bought the house. I don't have any doubts about it, but those are the kind of things that really piss me off, right? And I want to make sure that, okay, we're putting the best product out there so we can get the best price possible. Otherwise, how are we profiting this flip? So.
Nope, you're totally right. I had a contractor that did amazingly fast work, but it was amazingly fast. It showed that it was amazingly fast work. Corners weren't perfect, everything else, and it hurts you when you go to sell. It's a big eye opener. I just thought of this. Do you hire a contractor, or basically you're the contractor and you hire out all the subs and manage the subs, or do you have somebody?
Yeah, I'm the GC.
You're the GC because you might as well be, right, if you're there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can tell you, before COVID, at that point, we were doing, I think, 4 projects simultaneously at one point. And I actually started to hire and train a little mini me, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And that's the ideal situation, where if you can have 1 or 2 of these guys running, 3-4 projects by themselves, that's the way to scale, right? But it's hard, again, and I don't say it's not possible. It is very possible. Like, for example, in Windsor, I have that now. But then again, I'm there, right? So if he doesn't show up or if he doesn't perform, then I'm there to pick up the pieces. If you try to do that remotely somewhere where you can't get to easy enough or fast enough, just be sure that you have the right people and you have a buffer that can pay for that, right? And that's important.
Yeah, that's a key thing you mentioned there too. Having a buffer, having space, not be maxed out, having backup cash, having backup space in your budget, all these things, because surprises happen. Sav, this was awesome. I think we're going to have you back, and maybe I'll space it out so it doesn't show like up as back-to-back episodes. But we'll have you back again. But if people wanted to get a hold of you in the meantime, where do they track you down?
Yeah, thanks. So Real Estate Investor Sav, all one word. Real Estate Investor Sav. There's a lot of real estate investors these days, so okay. And you can use that on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Search up, that tagline. You'll find me everywhere. My email is sav@realestateinvestorsav.com. My website is realestateinvestorsav.com. So it's all on the same brand. You can find me. Drop me a line and we can chat for sure.
Awesome. This was a great chat. And like I said, we'll have to have you back. And I really appreciate you coming on. I think you've added a lot of value for everybody.
Thank you so much.